Greetings and salutations, my excellent friends. My name is Steve Miller, the Internet's Chi Ranger, and these are some important stories coming out of Seoul, South Korea. Now, I'm going to talk about two stories today that really have huge ramifications on how life is going to progress here in South Korea. Now, first up is really just an unprecedented raid on Union headquarters that took place Sunday morning. Now, Sunday morning, about 600 police officers stormed the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions office, seeking to execute arrest warrants for senior members for carrying out what the government is calling an illegal work stoppage. Now, they have been on strike for about 2 weeks now, and KORAIL, the national railroad here in Korea, has seen a dip in service between 30 and 40% depending on which rail line we're talking about. Now, the government is saying that the strike is illegal. The union is saying that they are striking because of a privatization plan made by the government. What's going on is that there's going to be a new high-speed rail line built here in Korea. It's actually going to come through Dongtan, where I live. And KORAIL is only going to have a 49% stake in this new line, which the union says is giving up the line to a private company, and this is why they are striking. Now, what is interesting about this raid is that this is really the first time in, well, memory that the government has gone in to try and arrest individuals. Now, this isn't just, hey, I'm going to execute some arrest warrants. This, as I said, took place with 600 police officers with pepper spray. They really forced their way into the offices. Workers at the offices resisted. They fought back with water cannons. It was a very messy situation. And ultimately, the individuals that the police were seeking were not there. So it's a huge PR gaffe by the administration, by the police, and the union is looking very good in terms of a lot of the population. There's a lot of support for what the union is doing because they are willing to sit down with the government to hash out details. The administration is not willing to do that. They are going the route of force and making the union just stop their work stoppage and come back to work. There's no room for discussion on the part of the government. And that is a key weakness. This is the same pitfall that the administration has used in dealing with Japan. They set aside a series of criteria, and unless those criteria are met, they aren't willing to discuss anything. And in this particular matter, there are some valid concerns by the rail workers that the government is failing to acknowledge. And unless the government realizes that, well, quite frankly, they're in the wrong, you can't force these individuals back. The public sentiment is on the side of the rail workers, and they need to really tone down their actions, open up dialogue, and resolve the situation peacefully. The second story is about the election. Now, Park Geun-hye came into office a little over a year ago, and really before the election and up until now, there have been allegations that the government and the Saenuri party tampered with the process. And as time has progressed, things just keep getting worse. We have allegations that the police try to cover it up. We have information that the military's psychological and cyber warfare departments were involved with it. We have allegations that the National Intelligence Service was involved with it. It's just looking as if members of the Saenuri party were trying to manipulate public opinion to make sure that Park Geun-hye was elected. Now, throughout all of this, Park Geun-hye has said, she knew nothing about it, she wasn't involved with it, and there's been no evidence to indicate that she was. However, there is significant evidence to show that these other entities were carrying out actions that could have in some way influence public opinion and skew the election towards Park. So, over the weekend, the members of the opposition parties wanted to submit a bill for an independent outside investigator to really uncover what really happened, who was responsible. And it doesn't look as if that bill is going to pass. Now, the reason for that is that for this bill to pass, it needs to have a majority vote for it in Parliament. And the Saenuri Party has actually 155 seats out of 300. So they hold the majority. So unless there's, well, a numbers game being played, it's not going to pass. And what I mean by a numbers game is that you need to have at least half the members of Parliament sitting to call a vote. And then half of those members need to vote in favor of the bill passage. So since the Saenuri Party has the majority, unless that 50% threshold is met with more members of the opposing parties, the Saenuri Party can actually block this. And this is a huge, huge mistake as well, because there are protests here in Korea. And last week, there are actually reports of expats, Korean expats around the world, also holding protests over the election and what has been done to really stifle the investigation to find out what really happened. And if the Saenuri Party does, in fact, block this, it's going to cast more doubts on Park's administration, because right now her approval rating has dipped below 50% for the first time since she held office. And there's growing distrust over the party, the Saenuri Party, and the administration over how they handle this and really the legitimacy of that election. I mentioned in the last podcast that two lawmakers from the opposition party actually called the election pretty much invalid and a fraud. So that sentiment is progressing throughout the populace. So the government, the Saenuri Party, really needs to listen to the opposing parties and carry out this investigation. It's the only way that comparisons between Park and her father can be eliminated because of the dictatorship label on her father. So those are the two big stories coming out of Korea. If you want to read the links to the stories, click on the annotation and go to chiranger.com. The link's also down below. But I would love to hear your thoughts on these matters. Should there be an independent investigation into the election? And what do you think is the best solution for the KORAIL strike? Is the government out of line, or are the strikers out of line? All right, that's it for today. Hope you have a very merry holiday, and I will see you next time.